You're listening to the Gabe Molina podcast.
Madison Rose, thank you for coming to the podcast. We've known each other a long time.
That we have.
And we used to be neighbors at one point.
Yes.
And now you're a mother and all that good stuff. You've grown, and I've gotten older and everything hurts. But, we were talking a while back. When you did live next to us, there was I remember y'all reaching out to me because something was happening in the neighborhood near you. And you were little. I don't know if you remember everything. I think I was talking to your mom. But somebody was looking for you, and they were in the neighborhood. And that's when I first realized something else was going on, And so that's why we're here. We're here to talk about your life experience and things that you'd endured. And it's made you the woman you are today. Yes. So give me a little back history on that stuff.
Oh, gosh. Where do I even begin?
The beginning.
Well, unfortunately, I've endured a lot of trauma being raised in a single-family home, but not only from my mother's side of the family and her home, but also in my biological father's home as well.
How old were you when they split up?
So when my mom and my biological dad split up, I was about 2 years old.
Oh, you were little.
I was little. And it caused my mom to have to fend for herself. From what I know and from what I was told, my dad and my mom split up because my father cheated on my mom with his ex-wife, who was my abuser, one of my abusers.
The ex-wife?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it was to a point where even though I was mandated to go to my father's house, I did not want to go. But unfortunately, my mom had no other option. She had to go. I had to go. There was no ifs, ands, buts, nothing. So growing up with her, on the times that I was with my dad for those weekends, it was a lot of abuse. And it kind of coincides, unfortunately, because the trauma and the abuse that I was going through when I was with my mom in her home, it reached my dad's. And unfortunately, I was sexually assaulted at a very young age with my mom's ex-boyfriend. And my mom was not aware of any of it. And he had threatened me to a point where that he would kill my mom if I had said anything.
How old do you think you were at the time?
I was actually 6.
Okay.
Yes, unfortunately, and that was not even a good, it was not a good time. So I never really got the proper help in that aspect because I wasn't completely free to be able to tell my dad what was going on because I was in fear of his ex-wife and the actions that she would take. And unfortunately, the abuse that I was going through sexually with my mom's ex-boyfriend caused me to pee the bed. And it's something that, unfortunately, instead of her asking the proper question of hey, what's going on? Are you maybe drinking too much before you go to bed? Trying to at least get me to open up a little bit. It would be to a point where she would beat me.
So she wasn't paying attention. She wasn't seeing the wetting the bed as a sign of something. She was seeing it as just a bad behavior that she didn't like.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Because it didn't work for her. And unfortunately, that was the problem that I ran into quite often because I would probably wet the bed every single time that I went over to their house. But keep in mind, I was not only scared of going back home with my mom because I had to deal with my abuser who's there, but I also had to go to my dad's and deal with the abuser there.
And she wasn't sexually, she was more physically,
She
like
was physically.
over disciplined kind of deal.
Yes. It would be to a point, I mean, like if I wet the bed, she would sit there and grab my entire head and push me into my urine. And I mean, it would be to a point where I couldn't breathe.
Wow.
Just sitting there, like breathing in the urine. And it's to a point where, like, even now, like if my child has an accident, I'm like, hey, you know, accidents happen. Let's just wash the sheets.
Sure.
It's not that big of a deal. And it's rare that he does. But, you know, to a point, I mean, what makes it go to that extent of being that way, you know?
I don't expect you to remember everything at that young of an age, but what was your dad doing? Like, I mean, he couldn't have been oblivious to that kind of thing because he would have known you were wetting the bed for one.
He definitely knew that I was wetting the bed, that's for sure. But to go to the extent of him really knowing, there was a lot of parts that whenever she would tell my dad what was going on, she wouldn't tell him everything. So there were things that she did leave out, I guess, in order for him not to know. So I don't know whether or not he knew to the full extent, but 90% of the time when she was doing the things that she was doing to me, he was not home. And that was because he was working. And unfortunately, that was one thing that did come up when things went to court. You know, if there was a possibility of, you know, my dad actually getting me when he is home and not when he's not home. But unfortunately, court order is a court order. So I wasn't able to.
Let me ask you this now that you're an adult. And I'm just speculating. As I wouldn't expect your mom's boyfriend to do anything in front of your mother. But being a mother now, do you think she really didn't know? Maybe she didn't know the extent of things, but I would imagine there's got to be something at some point that makes the red flag go up and go, hey, something doesn't seem correct. Even though you may not know, at least you would say, hey, what's going on here? You know?
Like questioning it.
Right.
I mean,
whether it's your behavior or whether it's his behavior, you know, I mean, that's your child, right? You should know red flags in your child. You should know when your child's behaving out of the ordinary, you know?
That's one thing that, you know, me and my mom, I've had to go through extensive amounts of therapy. I mean, even to a point where I've even gone through electrical shock therapy. And we have spoken about it. And that's one thing that she does beat herself up on is the fact that she did not read the proper signs. And, you know, the same thing kind of similar happened with her when she was younger. So she thought that she was going to be able to not let it happen to me, but she was not aware. But there was one thing that did kind of catch, you know, like what's going on here. And that was one day when she did come home from work. She had actually saw that the washing machine was on. And she knew she's the only one that did laundry. I didn't do laundry. She never showed me until I was much older. And he never did laundry. And so when she kind of put two and two together and then she knew that my sheets were missing, that was like a big red flag. And when she asked me, the only thing that popped in my head was, I can't say anything.
Because you're scared.
Not only that, but the threat that he had given me was that he was going to kill my mom. And unfortunately, at that point, when a lot of this was going on, my dad was no longer in the picture. So I didn't have my dad to fall back on.
Yeah.
So it was just me and my mom. And I had to really think about not saying anything. And it was so hard not to. But the thought of ever losing my mom, that was the biggest, and even still to this day, that is the biggest scare of my life. Because my mom has always been my backbone. I mean, she's been there for me, ups and downs and ins and outs.
Yeah. So it wasn't, not to paint her in a negative light, just, you know, she obviously cared about you. She was concerned about you. It just, you know, one thing that drives me crazy is there's a lot of things people can do, and I chalk those up to he's an asshole. She's an asshole.
Yeah.
But it's like when you violate a kid sexually, that is the ultimate sin you could ever commit. That's 100 times worse than anything else I can think of.
And I have to completely agree with you on that one. It comes to a point where, you take away at that point a child's innocence.
Sure.
And it didn't just happen on one occasion. It happened multiple times.
Yeah.
So for me to have to go through that and to not be able to tell anybody, it was to a point where, I actually, at a young age, contemplated suicide.
How old were you, do you think?
At this point, I was probably a lot older. I was maybe around 10, 11, which is very unusual.
Yeah. Well, let's go back a little bit. I want to go back to when your mom sees a red flag. What do you remember how she handled that, or what was it? Did they have a conversation? Was it something where she approached him and he set her at ease and kind of went away, or did she from that point on, did she hold on to that suspicion?
She had actually held on to that suspicion, and unfortunately, that was to a point where things got very domestic. With him and her.
Oh, I see.
Now, she had actually taken me out of the house, and she took me down to a McDonald's and took me out for ice cream. And she had asked me, she sat me down and she had asked me, she was like, hey, we need to have a conversation, and I want you to be 100% honest with me and know that you can tell me anything. And she had asked me, she's like, is something going on? She had asked me, she's like, did he hurt you in any way? And I had told her no. And the only reason why I had told her no was, again, I was afraid of losing her.
You thought you were protecting her, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's not something that you can ever come back from, and the manipulation that my dad's ex-wife caused between me and my dad. She manipulated a lot of mine and my dad's relationship, and it was pretty bad. It got to a point where me and my dad, we didn't speak for a long time, and it would be, he would be in my life for maybe about a week, maybe 2 weeks max, and then he would leave for about 4 or 5 years, and then it was the same repetitive thing. So it was never something where it was a consistent amount of time. And unfortunately, when a child that is going through that amount of trauma, they're looking for someone to be there.
Yeah,
and
someone to confide in.
And my look was for my dad. I'd always thought that my dad was going to be my protector, my confidant, my father. And unfortunately, I was not able to have that. And so I never got to tell my mom until I was about 12, when I had finally had the proper courage to actually tell her. And keep in mind, my abuser was well into a 6-year conviction. And he was in state prison at this point, where I was actually comfortable telling my mom what had happened.
What did he go to prison for?
Unfortunately, we had already had a protective order on him for a previous incident regarding domestic violence. And one night he ended up actually showing up at our house. It was like 2:00 in the morning. Me and my mom were sleeping, and she was re-renovating the home. So me and her, we were sleeping in my room together. And I wake up at 2:00 in the morning, and I'm hearing pounding on the door. I mean, pounding. And at this point, I was so startled. I woke up and I was like, what is that sound?
You're still like around 10 or younger at this point?
I was younger.
Okay.
I was probably about maybe, I want to say 7.
Okay.
And at this point, I wake up and I'm hearing pounding, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's nothing. And then I heard it again. I was like, okay, no, this is not nothing. So I woke my mom up, and she's sitting, she's sleeping right next to me. And I told her, I was like, Mom, somebody's here at the door. And she looked at me and she goes, Mija, just go to bed. No one's here. And I laid back down, and all of a sudden, like not even 2 seconds later, it was pounding again. And she got up real quick, and she's like, what the heck? She's like, what time is it? And I'm like, Mom, it's like 2:00 in the morning. So at this point, she's looking at me, and we're looking at each other, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. She goes, just go hide in the closet, and I'll take care of it. Well, she opens up the window, and by this point, we're living on the south side, so there's no telling what's going to pop up from the door. So every window has a burglar bars. And so she peeps open the little curtain on the side to look at the front porch, and she sees him, and he sees her move the curtain. And at this point, the fear that just drove my body was just a whole nother level. And unfortunately, because of the amount of domestic violence that was already occurring in the home from him, I already knew the routine. I called 911, and I was on the phone with the dispatcher. And she was asking me my address, and I was telling her. My full address, my name, what was going on. I was giving proper information. And I feel like at the age that I was at 7, no child should ever have to know that. But unfortunately, that was the reality for me.
Yeah.
And it was hard. And so by this time, cops are already on their way, and we didn't hear any more pounding. And we had a deadbolt, like a actual lock deadbolt on each side of the fence. And so he had actually jumped the fence. And by this time he was in the backyard. And where the backyard was, we had an AC unit in my room. My mom had already told me, call 911, hide underneath the bed, lock the door. So I did that. And by this point, unfortunately, I heard the AC being pulled out of the window. And I about lost it. I started screaming, and I never hung up the phone with 911. They were telling me to calm down. This lady, she was telling me, she's like, it's okay. Like, we're on the way. Just, it's okay. And my mom actually broke the door, trying to get into the room because I had locked it.
Oh.
And at this point, she's holding up a 12-gauge shotgun at him. And he's holding up the window, after ripping out the AC unit. And my mom's yelling at him, you need to get them away, like, hey. And he wasn't listening. Well, not even 2 seconds after that, the police had already jumped the fence, and they had tackled him on the ground and arrested him.
Wow.
And so after that, because not only did he violate the court order, that was the protective order, he actually got that, plus I believe he was in possession of a firearm, and he believed also had drugs on him. So unfortunately, with all of those combined, and he was, what I was told was he was also driving a stolen vehicle.
Wow.
So he got a sentence of 6 years. So unfortunately, that's kind of where I was actually able to tell my mom at that point. We had already moved out of that house. He didn't know where we were at, nothing. And we actually ended up moving to where we were before we moved in to the house next door to yours.
Okay.
And the thing is that unfortunately, they are not able to charge somebody or even proceed with charges or even start up a case until either there are no charges on him and he's out of prison, or there's no prison time whatsoever. Like if he's just out like you are, normal.
So they can't bring up charges while he's doing time for
a different
Really?
offense, yes.
That's interesting.
Unfortunately. And that was something that was so hard because after telling my story and after being able to actually speak up about what happened, I ended up going to the Rape Crisis Center, which is what they had referred us to for counseling. And I had went there for a while.
Let's hold on for a second. What is that? When you finally are able to talk to your mom about it, what is that conversation like between you and her? Was she in disbelief, or was it something where she believed you thoroughly? What was that conversation like between the two of you?
So that's actually a good thing. So when I told my mom what had happened, she actually broke down. She was crying. She was so upset at the fact that she did not believe her instinct, and she blamed herself.
Yeah.
But I keep, and I always remind her to this day, the things that my mom did, I don't blame her, or what his actions were. I don't blame her. I don't blame her. It wasn't her actions. It was his.
Right.
And unfortunately, even me being a mom, it's always the mom guilt that gets you, because you always feel like, hey, you can do better for your child. And that's something that my aunt came over to the house, they were trying to console her and I, because we were both crying. It was to a point where we both cried, because I felt like I did wrong by telling her, because I opened up an entire can of worms.
What's so interesting, and not that it's a good thing at all, but it's so interesting because when somebody's an abusive person, whether it's sexually or physically or verbally or whatever means of abuse they're doing, the victims, maybe not always, but I feel like a lot of times the victims internalize the reason behind it. Mm-hmm. And I've had conversations with people even up to recently where it's like people are concerned with what you were concerned with, right? Which was the safety of your mother. They're concerned with the safety of themselves. In some cases, I think there is shame and embarrassment. And the shitty thing is everything people do to try and, I guess, shield themselves from those feelings, always ends up protecting the asshole that did the abusing. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're the last ones to get exposed.
Yes.
And it's wild to me. A lot of times when I was younger, I wasn't very smart, but I was, I never understood. I was like, well, why didn't somebody come forward sooner? Right. And it's like, well, most of the time they're embarrassed. They're scared. They feel shame. And it's like it's like, okay, that makes sense, but we let this guy continue to do that. You hear about guys that they get away with it, or they threaten and nobody ever brings it up, and they abuse more and more people. And it's like, everybody wants to point fingers internally, and it's like, no, we need to point the finger at the abuser.
And unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of the times the abusers are not the ones that are actually brought to justice. The victims feel victimized all over again, because not only are they having to tell their stories are being taken apart, and it's like a pawn,
right.
They're using it for different reasons, like even for mine too. Unfortunately, I was very close with a lot of my family before it had happened. And
like aunts and uncles and things like that?
Yes, especially my grandmother, my grandfather. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, because my dad wasn't around, my grandmother actually, she would take me occasionally from my mom's, and I would spend the weekend with her.
And that's your
my
dad's
mother? Mom.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, because of the person that my dad was married to and how manipulating she is, she sat there and she stated different things to my grandmother, to a point where my grandmother no longer spoke to me, because she was in fear of actually losing custody of her son, who has cerebral palsy and different things. So
So she was kind of manipulating them.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, that actually broke the relationship between me and my grandmother and my grandfather. And that hurt. That hurt a lot, because not only was I not able to have a relationship with my dad because of her, I now also lost my grandmother and my grandfather. Yeah. So
it basically, you were on an island, and the more people you lost in your life, the farther they pushed that island out in the middle ocean, and then it's literally just you and your mom now at this point.
Exactly. It was just me and my mom, and you know, for the longest time, that's honestly the hardest, because during things like this, you need to have your family. Your family is your support system, and I feel like with her, she just ripped my support system in half. And now it was just me, my mom, and really just my aunt and my grandmother. And my mom was embarrassed to even tell my aunt or grandmother what was going on. And they could kind of see that something was off, because my usual child demeanor was not the same anymore.
Right.
And that was
Well, I think from what I know of you, I feel like your personality is very happy and outgoing and charming. So any deviation in that, like, I would see it more so in somebody like you than a kid that's very quiet and reserved into himself,
and see,
as it is. So.
When I was a child, I was the same way. I was very outgoing. I was very, you know, outspoken. I was happy, go lucky. And a lot of the time when a lot of the stuff was going on, I shut down. I did not say anything. I did not speak a lot.
Which is a huge red flag.
Which is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, unfortunately, because my mom was never properly, I guess, shown as a child how to be a child or even to be a grown-up, she didn't know properly how to reflect those actions with me.
Yeah.
So she didn't know how to react, and she didn't know what to do. She was never given, you know, no parenting. There's no book on parenting at all. And unfortunately, she just didn't know what to do. And I don't blame her for it. You know, there's a lot of things that, you know, growing up, my mom and I, we even slept in a car because at one point we were homeless. And unfortunately, my dad found out and there was nothing done. You know, and whether I know whether or not he was able to do anything or he just didn't have the capability of doing anything, I mean, we were sleeping in a car, and my mom worked 3 jobs to put food on the table, a roof over my head, and it still was barely us scraping by.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, my mom, honestly, she beats herself up because sometimes she does feel like she's a horrible parent, and God honest truth, she's not.
Yeah.
Because 90% of the stuff that I went through, I wouldn't have been able to come outside of that without her.
Well, I mean, even if she had similar experiences as you did, I mean, on top of everything else, she's still dealing with her own experiences.
Yeah.
So you go to the Rape Crisis Center, right?
Yes.
And so you started therapy there. Is it therapy by yourself or with your mother? Or?
So we actually started by myself first. Okay. They actually brought me into a room, and quite like this, and it had nothing but toys and doll houses and things you can think of, you know,
trying
crafts.
to make you comfortable.
Yes, making me comfortable. And I was able to disclose exactly what happened in detail, you know, what room it happened in, where it happened, you know, what locations it happened at. And those are things that even now, you know, it's still hard to even think about. Because for the longest time, it actually ended up going to a point where telling these things that happened to me with an actual professional, they got even worse. And it wasn't something where,
How
you know, so typically whenever you speak about something, it's kind of like a relief. You know, after you tell somebody, you feel like lighter.
The weight off your chest, yeah.
For me, it was not. I felt like every single time that I closed my eyes to go to sleep, it was even worse. And unfortunately, I felt like the sexual abuse was happening over and over again in my head. And that was like the worst thing possible because I'm supposed to be out of that situation. He's not even nowhere near me. And he's locked up on a different thing. And I feel like he's still there. And that was the worst thing, was sitting there and just laying down in my own bed, in my own room, and feeling him touch me in my dream. And I mean, my dreams were so vivid that it was horrible. And that's when I was actually referred to do the electrical shock therapy. And
I didn't even realize you still did that.
Unfortunately, they did. And that's something that, even growing up and getting older and, actually being able to have the proper support system now, I was actually able to now speak out about it.
How old are you with the shock therapy?
I was about 13, 12 or 13 at that point.
And is this when you started having your suicidal thoughts, or was it before that?
So I had my suicidal thoughts when I was a little bit younger. I was around 10. And then unfortunately, because of the, how vivid everything was yet again, it happened again. And unfortunately, it was because of the fact that, your self-worth, for me, it was depreciating at the second.
Yeah.
And that was the worst thing possible, is just, feeling the fact that I'm not good enough, that I don't look good, that I'm not wanted. And that was one thing that, even my dad's ex-wife would always sit there and say, nobody would love me again. And she would even tell me, my dad doesn't love me, and those thoughts, they run in my head.
Yeah, that's real shitty.
Unfortunately,
it's not as shitty, but it's pretty shitty.
But you know what? And I always, as bad as it is, I always feel that karma does come around, whether it's now or whether it's later. I always feel like karma does come back to bite you in the ass, and I feel like I did with her, because there are things that she did tell me that, my dad will never love me. My dad will never be there for me. But yet she did the same thing with my half sisters. And so now my dad doesn't have the ability to see my sisters because she moved them across the country.
How many sisters do you have
with my dad?
Through your dad.
Through my dad, I have 2.
Okay, so there's 2 more sisters on that side. So she's pushed them, or did she take them away from you?
She took them.
Oh, gotcha.
And unfortunately, I don't know the full depth of it. I knew that she did say something along the lines that I was the one that caused it. I don't know. But unfortunately, with her, it seems like everything was Madison's fault and nothing was hers.
Right.
So it is what it is. But
what's funny is, like, we never were able to have kids, but I sit there and as I get older, I try not to apply generalities to everybody. Everybody's different, but I would think that at some point, even if you're an asshole, at some point you would say, these are my kids.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to have some kind of connection to them. And at some point, as a man, you would say, I need to go around this lady, and I need to make a connection with my children. I don't need my connection to be filtered through her, And you would hope that a guy would say, hey, I'm sure that if she was that manipulative, they couldn't have had such a great relationship.
Oh, no.
So for him to be able to say, hey, I know how she is.
Yeah. I'm
going to make this connection myself. But the fact that it doesn't sound like he made that effort. And it's like...
And unfortunately, and I don't blame my dad. I need to put that out there. I do not blame my dad. I feel like a lot of the things that happened when I was growing up, it was a lot of her. It was a lot of manipulation on her part. And I say this, I've actually had a conversation with my dad's current wife and my dad. We talk from time to time. And there is one thing that I've always consistently said, even with my dad's current wife. When they first got together, I actually went through a rebellious stage and I ran away from home. And I thought that was the best idea possible because I felt like everything was crumbling down. And there was a lot of things that were going on where instead of going to her and having a proper conversation, I thought it was another ex-wife of his. The same actions.
The current wife?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I never got her, got the proper time to properly, get to know her. And
well, you're young, right? And you go, this is what happened the first time. The second time is probably the same. I mean, you're young, so.
And unfortunately, that was one thing. And I did apologize, with my dad's current wife. I did apologize with her. And we actually had to sit down. We had a one-on-one, and I apologized to her and I let her know that I was sorry, because I did take out a lot of my anger on her, even though she did no wrong. And the reason why was because, again, I felt like she was another ex-wife, manipulative, abusive, that kind of thing. So I never gave her a chance.
Yeah.
And you know what? And I honestly, I thank her for putting up not only with my crap, but also still staying with my dad even after. And then also the fact that the ex-wife put her through a whole whirlwind of bullshit as well.
Yeah.
And so, and I was never ever shown a healthy relationship until after. And a lot of the crap that I went through growing up, I made sure that me and my husband, we had a healthy relationship. And mind you, no relationship is ever perfect.
Right. Let's hold on, because I do want to get to that part. But your father's ex-wife is gone now.
Yeah.
He's got a new wife, right? Y'all are building that up. Your mother's ex goes to prison, but it's only for 6 years.
Yes.
So you were what, 9 or 10 at that time?
So when he got out, it was actually on my 14th birthday.
Oh, okay.
And it was right on my birthday because my mom and...
How old were you when we lived next to each other?
We were actually... I was 15.
Okay, so shortly after.
Yes.
Okay.
So unfortunately, he was let out around... I was 13. I was 13.
Okay.
He was let out when I was 13. And I know that it was on my birthday because my mom and her ex-husband actually took me out for dinner.
The abuser guy.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, got you. I'm following.
And he actually, they both took me out for dinner, and we had went to Cheddar's, and we came back, and there was a envelope attached to the door, and it was paperwork from the sheriff's office letting us know of his release.
Oh.
Yes. And
that's got to be a terrible package to open.
It was definitely the worst birthday present I can ever ask for. I will say that. But unfortunately, with that came a protective order that was already set in place because of the charges that they were pursuing with the sexual assault, right, and then the domestic violence on top of that with my mom. And so one thing that I will never understand is that with a protective order, the person who is the abuser ends up getting the victim's address.
Really?
Unfortunately.
Is that part of the process, or was that a mistake?
That is every process.
Really?
Unfortunately, and I still don't know why till this day.
Well, I wonder if it's like, hey, you don't go to this address.
It's a vicinity that they're not supposed to be within, and it's a certain amount of feet that they're not supposed to come around.
So they can narrow it down.
Yes. And unfortunately, it's something for them to be able to say, hey, this person lives at this address. You're not allowed to go around that area.
Wow.
But for me, it's a whole different issue.
That's crazy.
I will never understand or begin to understand why a victim should feel victimized yet again by the court system because of the fact that they are given their personal information to the abuser, directly to the abuser. So unfortunately, when they had given us the protective order, it actually got to a point where a couple of days later, we end up getting a call from our lawyer who is representing us during the whole court system. And they called us down to their office to go through the testimonial process. We're having this whole conversation. They're bringing up his rap sheet, and I kid you not, this man has like over 30 pages worth of charges, from anywhere from drug offenses to stolen vehicles to domestic violence to the whole 9 yards. And
it's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing the fact that he's out
Yeah.
every single time with a short amount of time of repercussions for his actions. And I still, I mean, looking and, I mean, I kid you not, it's a stack this thick full of charges that he did. And it's like, at what point one person is just going to be tossed the book and said, I'm going to give you life. You're done. You know?
You know, when I was a kid, we were watching, I think it was, I forget the name of the girl, but I think it was in Florida. She'd gotten abused and murdered, and the guy put her under the front porch. And I want to say, and I was young, so I might have the number off, but I want to say he had been charged 24 times of molesting kids. And it's like, wow, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's the worst part is, you know, and sitting there, you know, and unfortunately during the whole court case, they actually want me to be able to get coping skills to be able to go against him in trial, you know, and so they're setting me up to be questioned against his attorneys, you know, and they're supposed to be asking me all these questions. And that's the worst thing is the fact that, again, I'm victimized.
Even in the preparation for.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
And, you know, and the worst part is that not only did we have a protective order against him, he even went to a point where, because of the amount of school that I missed, going to the courthouse and having to deal with our attorneys to, you know, be able to prep me for the trial, I missed a lot of school. And so I had to go to summer school. And it was only a couple, you know, hours that I had to make up. It wasn't nothing major. And one day I'm actually getting on the bus. And at this point, my brothers aren't home. One of my older brothers is actually my stepbrothers is at football practice. So no one's home. And my mom's husband was at work, and so was my mom. My mom was at work. And I'm getting off the school bus, and I noticed this car. And unfortunately, again, this goes back to the same thing. When you're a victim, you never look at life the same anymore. So I always feel like my head is on a swivel. Sure. I'm always looking over my shoulders. I'm never comfortable. And I look over as I'm walking off the school bus, and I see this car. And it's not a car that's normal at all.
Well, your gut's telling you something's off.
My red flags are pinging left and right. I kid you not. It was like my stomach was playing pinball. And I look over, and he is getting out of the car. My abuser is getting out of the car. And his sister.
For you, or they just were in the area?
They're getting out of the car for me. And this kid walks off the bus before me. And then it was me. And I had already made eye contact with him. And I almost peed myself. And I don't know what the hell was going over my head, but something told me, run. Just run. And I should have just stayed in the bus. I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
Well, it's not you're young. You're not going to make the best decision there.
Oh, yeah. Because hands down.
You're scared, and you're a kid still.
And unfortunately, it was something to a point where, I don't know. I always say that it was my grandfather and God that were looking after me that day, because I bolted. I bolted from that bus, and I ran home. And it was unlike it, but there had never been a cop sitting outside that house ever. And on this day, there was. And I ran straight to the cop. I gave him a description of the car, told him exactly where they were, who they were, and that we had a protective order out. The cop actually put it over the broadcast. And at this point, from what I was told, was that there was some sort of chase, or I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of that situation. However, the cop that was there took me in front of my house, and he had me unlock the door, He searched the entire house. You know, all the windows were completely closed. They were locked. Everything was good. He told me to go inside, and he called my mom. My mom came home, and I mean, she's on the other side of town, you know, a good 20 minutes from me. Yeah. And she completely just books it. And she made it home within 10 minutes. Yeah. And that was actually the day that they put the house up for sale. Mm. And that is when we purchased the house next door to yours.
Oh, gotcha.
Because he was looking for me. And unfortunately, it was because of the protective order that gave him access to me. Because he had no idea where we lived. Yeah. He would never even travel on that side of town ever. Jeez. And that was the reason why we ended up moving again.
You know, I think the night that he tried to get in through your window, it would have added trauma to you, but it wouldn't have been the worst thing had your mom shot him with that shotgun.
You know, honestly, I never wish harm on anybody. However,
I'll do it for you, Madison. I'll wish harm on him.
Honestly, you know, now it's even to a point where even as an adult, I still look over my shoulders.
Is he still out?
No, he is not. But he will be getting out soon.
Really?
Yeah, unfortunately. I actually got a call, and I made some calls, and he was booked May 2019. He pled guilty.
To what he had done to you and your mom?
Yes. And he also had a felony possession of a firearm yet again. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he's a felon and still carrying a firearm, that's a problem to you.
Sure.
But the problem that and again, this goes back to, I had to go back to counseling after that whole situation happened, because the thought, he wasn't there to make me sign papers. He wasn't there to say hello. He was there to kidnap me. Mm-hmm. Let's lay the cards sure. out. He was there to kidnap me. So to know that, you know, it would have probably been on another, you know, episode of First 48, you sure. know, I would have been murdered.
Yeah.
That's the type of person he is. He's the type of person where he gets vengeance.
Do you think that's where he's at mentally right now? I mean, he's probably all over the place mentally, but do you think he, and this is just speculation, we don't know, we're not him, but do you think his intent is just vengeance because I put him away? Because you told the truth? You know?
I think so.
That's wild.
That is my fear. And it's a crippling fear.
Sure.
It is a crippling fear. And unfortunately, that has led me to do the proper procedures to carry with me. Mm-hmm. And I have to. Sure. Unfortunately, now it is something where I know I don't go anywhere without my, you know, sure. pew yeah. anymore. And that's the worst thing that I can possibly think of, because before I never thought that I had to have that fear. But now that I have a child, it's a whole different story.
Oh, I believe it.
And you think I'm a helicopter mom? No, I'm worse than a helicopter mom.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and that's something that I pride myself in, my child's safety, because the trauma that I went through as a child, I will be damned if my child will ever go through any trauma. And it goes to the same thing. There are certain people that I allow around my child. There are certain things that I allow around my child. And even though I do have a lot of family, there are certain family members I do not allow sure. around my child. My child is not outside of my eyes.
Yeah.
Ever.
You know, the thing about something like that is unfortunately, people who do that to a child, they're fucked in the head, basically.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we're just being straight with it. And unfortunately, they're everywhere.
And you say that, and this is the worst thing, though, is that during the process of us going for trial, we never made it to trial. Because he pled guilty, because they gave him a way out. Mm.
When is he? Do you know when he's eligible to be released?
Unfortunately, he had a parole hearing in 2023, which was
Okay.
denied. And he was given another parole hearing, which is coming up in the next couple of months. But he is set to be released in 2027.
Oh wow! So even if he does the entirety of what he was pled to or his deal,
Yes.
I mean, that's not very far off.
No, not at all. And unfortunately, the thing is that when we were going through the pretrial stages, they had us go into the courthouse, San Antonio courthouse, downtown. And, my mom's ex-husband was actually parking the truck. He dropped us off in the front, me and my mom. And we walked up the stairs. And we were sitting down. We went to go sit down on the bench. And I look over, and this is like the pre-trial, like I don't remember the term for it. I look over, and I see him. The first time I had seen him in years. And I peed myself. At 15 years old, I peed myself. And I was scared. I was so scared. And I looked over at my mom. I said, Mom, he's here. And she said, Mija, no, he's not. He's not here. He's not supposed to be here. And it was just supposed to be for us. And I said, no, Mom, he's here. And I start crying. Well, at this point, he sees me. And I will never forget what he did. Not only was there a protective order, again, still in place, the balls on this man to walk up to me and my mom. And I said, Mom, he is here. And as soon as I told her where he was, they made eye contact. My mom's face dropped. And he started walking over to us. So this man had he did not care. He gave no fuck at all. He literally just got up and walked over to me and my mom. My mom pulled me behind her, and he just straight up asked, I have paperwork for you to sign, and this is a consent form.
Consent for?
For sex with me. That what we had was consensual.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And my mom...
Who drew that up for him?
Apparently his lawyers.
How old are you right now at that point?
At this point, I was 15. But when everything had happened and
Did he
had
really have that, or was he psychotic?
No, he had paperwork.
Saying that he had consent to have sex with a minor.
I don't know what it said on there, but I know that's what he had said.
So he could have been manipulating what he had. He was just lying.
I don't know if it was,
Oh,
but that's
Lord.
what he had said. He said, I have paperwork and I need you to sign it, and that it is consent for sexual.
Was his lawyer there?
No.
Were cops there?
Unfortunately, they are there, but they were not in that area.
How did y'all get out of that situation?
So they they opened up the doors for everyone to walk in, and his case came onto docket, and they pulled us in. We stood up, he stood up, and at this point, everything was pled out, or not pled out, but everything was discussed, and that we were going to go on to the trial. That was the next step. And so after that, they set up a trial date is what it is. And we're walking out, and our attorney, is speaking with us, and she noticed that my pants were wet, and she noticed that I had been crying. She said, "Are you okay?" And I said, No. And at this point, I'm still kind of trickling with tears a little bit. Like, I'm still scared. And I was holding my mom's hand. And my mom looked at the attorney, and she said, "No, my daughter is not okay. He was here." She's like, "What do you mean he was here?" And my mom said, "He physically walked up to me and my daughter and asked us to sign consent forms that what happened to him and my daughter was consensual. And after that, that's when they were actually able to place him in arrest because of the fact that, yet again, he violated the protective order.
Yeah.
And now this is the fourth time that this man had violated the protective order, because not only did he violate it the first time when he was drunk and it was 2:00 in the morning, and then it happened again, and then again at the bus stop after drop off from summer school, and then again now. And this one was plain daylight. This was at the courthouse.
You know what's crazy to me is our process, the judicial process, law enforcement, it's very reactive.
Oh, yes.
It's not proactive.
Oh, no.
And it's scary because of the amount of opportunities that he has had to get close to y'all physically.
Yeah.
Had he even at the courthouse, had he decided, I just want to hurt them, he could have.
Yeah.
There's no boundary, there's no barrier,
Nothing.
and it's so interesting because like you're constantly not protecting the victim.
Yeah.
It's like the victim is always second.
Oh, yes. And that's the worst thing too, is because like sometimes you'll actually, like, there's cases that come up all the time, whether it be San Antonio, whether it be Michigan, wherever. And you're seeing these cases transpire, and unfortunately the victim is the one that ends up murdered because the law enforcement and the prosecutors and even the attorneys for the victims did not protect the victim.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing. And that's my biggest fear, honestly. That is my biggest fear. And when I turned 18, me and my husband, we had got married and we moved. I moved. He was Maryland, I moved with. I gave no damn. Unfortunately, I left all my family behind, but it was the best thing possible because I knew damn well he was not able to get me there.
How at what point did you and your husband, maybe it was when you were dating, did you bring him up to speed with everything that was going on?
So
was it early on or was it later?
Unfortunately, I did not have a normal childhood. So part of when me and my husband were first dating back in high school, he was already somewhat aware of it.
Okay.
And it would be because, I would always have to tell him like, hey, I'm not going to be at class. Like I'm going to be,
So y'all were friends early on?
Yeah. So we were very much friends early on. So that's kind of like when he kind of knew. But when I fully told him exactly what had happened, it was much after, before we got married. And that's one thing though, is like with my husband being military, I mean, he, even now to this day, he's a very, very much protective. He does not let me go many places without him.
Sure.
And that's something where that's like the biggest thing for me. And I'm never alone anymore.
Yeah. Well, not to cause anxiety for you, but I try and put myself in your shoes, and with the whole process and how much time he's got left, the odds of him getting his shit together and coming out and being a better person isn't very high.
No.
So, I mean, what is your, and I don't want you to give particulars, but have you come to terms with that and how you live your life? Or is it one of those things where you say, hey, I'm just going to live as well as I can and hope for the best? Or do you really feel like this is, until the day he's no longer with us, you have to have your guard up?
You know what? And that's actually a very, very good thing to ask. Unfortunately, like I said, I live with my head on a swivel. And I will tell you this: if I am ever dead at any point, just know who it is. That's I'm wholeheartedly believe that he is the type of man who has a vengeance, and whether or not people understand or know, that man will get his vengeance.
Yeah.
And that is the worst thing possible, and that is my D card. However, my A card is to always keep my head held high.
Yeah.
And like I said, unfortunately, I am the type of person where not a lot of women carry, but I do.
Sure.
I have to. And it's normal. It's a normal thing for me now.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It should not be. And we'll see. We'll see how things play out. I was given an offer to go to his parole board hearing and give a victim impact statement. And I don't know. I don't think I want to. Unfortunately, I'm very much aware that he ended up getting married again. Well, not again. He got married to somebody. And she has at the time she had a 15-year-old daughter. So I don't know. However, it is something that does cross my mind because, people really don't ever change, unfortunately.
Is it possible, and this is just me questioning, is it possible to give an impact statement, like a written statement, or
I've heard.
are there processes to where you don't have to go there? Because, it's important for them to understand the type of person he is, and for the parole board to understand the continued impact that he continues to make on your life.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, things are good now. If he's cool, let him out.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we live in fear because
I live
of
in
him.
fear every day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, even though he is locked up, I do live in fear because, yet again, he's a very vengeful person. But if it was so easy for him to know where I was and for him to grab me that day and his sister, what makes you think that his sister wouldn't do is carry out his dirty work for him?
Sure.
What makes you think?
Yeah.
And the worst thing is that unfortunately, even looking back at it now, it's still something where the amount of trauma that I've dealt with my entire life has always played a part in my fear. And it's never a fear that is ever gone away. The only time it's always away is when I'm not in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is the biggest thing, is me being out of the state of Texas. Because I know damn well he won't be able to leave.
Yeah.
And that's sad. It's sad, but it's a reality for me.
Where do you think you are now at this point in your life? Do you feel like do you still have, and this might be a stupid question, but do you have still an intense fear of him? Or do you feel like with everything you've been through, you feel a little bit stronger and a little more confident in yourself?
Oh, much definitely. I will say this: I am not the child that I used to be. Unfortunately, a couple years ago, I actually lost my grandmother. And my grandmother was a very blunt person. She's very direct. And the person that she was is part of me now. And I speak freely. Unfortunately, if people don't like it, I always say, get the fuck over it. Because at the end of the day, I don't have time to sympathize for people if they don't like what I say. And even like speaking with you and telling my story, I know damn well that people are going to have a problem with it.
Sure.
However, again, it's not their story to tell. It's mine. And it is what it is.
Yeah.
The person that I am, I have no problem being.
Yeah.
As bad as that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this, and I don't want us. I don't want us to tell people that they're handling their situations the wrong way. Mm-hmm. But in your opinion, if you could talk to a kid going through what you're going through, what would be your advice to them? And also, as a mother, what would be your advice to a mother? Like maybe whether it's looking for red flags or how to,
Yeah.
everybody's going to handle it differently.
Every
But what
person's
advice
different.
would you give somebody who potentially, whether it's a mother or a child?
Yeah. And this is actually something that, unfortunately, with the trauma that I've been through, I've dealt with in my own home. I handle things a lot differently, especially with my son. I'm very direct with him, and he's very direct with me. If he tells, and he'll tell you he doesn't like something, he'll tell you he doesn't like it. And that's the boy that me and my husband have raised, is to be able to be honest, and to be open about things. And I feel that if a child is going through a trauma, right, especially with my situation, had I been, at least a little bit more comfortable to speak my mind, I would have been able to. But unfortunately, with the beatings that I received from my dad's ex, plus with my sexual abuser, I definitely would have been able to open had I not had both. And I feel like with some parents, they don't understand because either they never went through it, or either they don't know how to handle it. There's no parent guide when it comes to children.
Sure.
And I feel like with children that go through sexual abuse or who go through trauma, even if it's just domestic violence, a lot of people, even that are in relationships and they see their mother get beat by a significant other. And I was down that road, with my sexual abuser. It was before a sexual abuser. It was pure domestic violence, unfortunately. Yeah. And it was to a point where he would beat the crap out of my mom in front of me. And I would scream and I would cry. And I would, hide in a corner because I was scared. So, and not a lot of people even understand, or the parents, especially the moms that are going through that abuse, they don't understand what effect that has on a child. Because as a child, you're seeing your mother getting hurt and getting beat. It is a different level of pain. And it's a pain that you can never, get back, or even unsee at that moment, And it's something where I've always tried to, let people know, like, hey, there are resources out there. There is always ways for you to be able to get the help. Now, unfortunately, especially with the system that we have, a lot of people, they don't come forward. And the reason why they don't come forward is because, yet again, it comes into a 360. The victim ends up getting victimized over and over again, because not only do they have to go and tell their story over and over and over again, but their information is given to their abuser, and it comes back to a whole different issue yet again. And so people don't want to, give their information out. And there was one, unfortunately, during this whole court case that happened with me, the courthouse gave us assistance in some way. And it's actually a biker group called BACA. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a biker group. And
Is it like BACA?
It's BACCA or something like that. And honestly, thankfully, it didn't go to that point where we actually ended up going to trial, because he pled guilty already before us even going to court. But they had brought us in and we were speaking with them, and they, on the day of the trial, because it was already set before, they were going to take me for the day. They were going to take me to go get lunch.
Baca group.
And they were going to take me for lunch. They were going to take me, to go get ice cream, all things like that. And then when they get the call from the courthouse from my attorney, to bring me in for me to be able to testify against him, and then they would take me out again. Just until deliberation or whatever the case was. But the amount of comfort to know that there was over 30 people that were in this group that are sitting there and protecting one child. it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I felt so safe. I felt so safe when I was with them, and it's crazy because I didn't even get to fully interact with them because we didn't, like I said, we didn't end up going to trial. He'd already pled guilty at that point before we even set, foot into the room. And so, it is something where unfortunately, I do want to look for an actual group that does help with domestic violence and with sexual assault. And the Rape Crisis Center, they're really good. However, with everything going on, because they are free, it is something where they are so extended,
Yeah.
There's not, and it goes back to the CPS thing too, unfortunately, my dad's ex-wife was never charged for the abuse that she did with me, with the bloody lips, busted nose, the black eyes and things like that. She was never charged for that, and it goes back to the same thing. The CPS, they're backed up,
Sure.
Rape Crisis Center is backed up, but I feel like some ways that people can always be able to tell that something's going on. And even if it's just a counselor at school, I mean, counselors are mandated to actually call in the police department. And that I feel is one of the safest ways to actually be able to tell somebody what's going on. Because not only is it something where it's having to go through multiple people, you're not giving an option for your parent to actually
sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. They're,
You're taking it out of their hands.
Exactly. And that's a big thing too, is because I feel like a lot of, unfortunately, it goes into, with domestic violence, you're getting used to these stories that are going on, and they're actually going in and they're afraid to tell their stories. But not only are they afraid to tell their stories, they're actually not able to actually tell anybody anything because their parent is so used to their abuser. Yeah. And they're afraid for their abuser, or either they want to cover up for their abuser because they love their abuser. And notice how I did the air quotes,
Sure.
Right? It is something where, unfortunately, you do see it, where their abusers the victims cover up for the abusers. And if their child is telling them something that's going on, they'll sweep it under the rug. And unfortunately, you can't sweep it under the rug if you tell your counselor at school, like, hey, this is what's going on. Because and then at that point, the counselor doesn't call in the parent. Right. They call in 911. They go around because it's mandated for them to disclose what's going on with law enforcement.
Yeah.
And then at that point, law enforcement is mandated to, send it up the ranks.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest one.
I think there's probably a little bit of if we don't talk about it, it'll go away kind of thing, and it's not going to. So.
And then I'm a very big believer when it comes down to victims, they have a voice. And unfortunately, again, mine was taken from me. Mine was taken from me so many times. And it goes back to the same thing with my dad's ex-wife. She took my voice. Sure. She did. She manipulated a lot of my family, and I'm taking that back. This is definitely my time for me to be able to take it back, and this is me taking it back. And whether or not they see it, it's on them. But at the end of the day, I'm also helping others who feel like they can't help themselves, and that's where I'm at right now.
I'm glad that you've found your strength, and I feel like you found it early. One thing that is a shame is that often abusers, whether they're physical or sexual or whatever it is, they get prison time. They go to prison. They come out, and they've fulfilled their quote unquote debt to society. But the people that they've impacted, their victims. It's a lifelong deal. Oh, you know what I'm saying? And if you live to be 90, it'll be something that's part of your life till you're 90. You know? And I think that's one thing that's a shame about especially sexual abuse, sexual abuse of a child. Like I said earlier, that's the worst thing that I think you can ever do to somebody, because you literally are stealing their life from them. They
stole my innocence. I was not able to be a child, unfortunately. And that's the worst thing that somebody can do. Yeah. And as a child, the child has to be a child for as long as possible. And I was not able to have that. Yeah. I never did. And it kind of goes back to the same thing, you're saying that, they need to pay. And if people don't hold them accountable, they will never pay. Yeah. And unfortunately, I feel like the justice system that we have is somewhat faulty. If, a murderer can be convicted for 10 to, life. However,
well, you've literally killed that kid. Yeah.
And in some ways, it goes back to the same thing. The victim has lost their innocence. Sure. That is part of their life. That is 90% of their childhood.
Well, I mean, even with the suicidal thoughts you had at a very young age, I mean, had you gone through with that, I mean,
I would not
murder.
Be here.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's he would have gotten away scot-free, and everybody been like, well, Madison was just a problem. She just had issues.
And that's exactly, and unfortunately, my dad's ex-wife always painted that I was the problem. Yeah. I was always the problem. And that's one thing that I will never begin to understand. You will never understand that I was never the problem. I was the victim. Yeah. And the fact that she never took accountability for her own actions, that's on her. And even, unfortunately, a couple years ago when I was pregnant with my son, I had went up to Pennsylvania to actually see my half-sisters. And I had went because, I wasn't too far. I was probably like 2 hours away from them. I was living in Maryland. And the crazy thing is that when I went to go see them, she had actually brought up the whole conversation. Oh, do you see my dad? Do I talk to my dad? Kind of thing, right? And it's like every single time that I would see her, because unfortunately it's inevitable that I see her because I have to see my sisters. It's something where she would always ask me, have you seen your dad? Have you talked to your dad? And it became to a point where with her new man that she's with, she tried to paint me out to be the liar in front of him to make what she did okay. Mm. And I was like, I'm not going to go down this conversation. And she got really upset because I would not cover up for her. Yeah. And unfortunately, that was the last time that I did see my sisters. One of my sisters. Was that? This was probably back in 2020 or 2021.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So it's been a while.
It's been a while. And it was something like even now, like one of my sisters, she actually graduated high school. Hmm. And it was crazy because, everybody was invited to go to her graduation. I never got a text message or anything. Yeah. So I knew that I struck a nerve because I didn't,
play
along to what she wanted. And it was something where, like, even now, I love my sisters to death. I will always love them. They're part of me. They will always be part of me. However, the feelings that I have will always be, I'm going to let you be. And if you ever want to seek me out, you can seek me out.
It's like a limited relationship.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's very limited when it comes to her because if I want to see my sisters, I'm going to have to see her.
Right.
So I kind of gave up on it, unfortunately, and it is one thing too. It's like, it's hard because even after a couple years, after my abuser had already pled guilty and everything, my grandmother actually came around. Mm. And it had been years. And I'm talking almost more than a decade. And it was the first time that I had seen her in a long time. And she was crying, right? And there was one conversation that was brought up between me and her, and we had that conversation. She had apologized to me because we hadn't seen each other in so long. And her excuse was always, oh, I never wanted to lose custody of her son that has cerebral palsy. And, sitting there and just thinking about it, it was crazy because you allowed somebody to come in between the relationship we had. And the hardest part.
Which, for one,
Yeah.
that's a long shot for her to lose custody of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so who knows what she was told? But
see,
you know, reality is,
and that's the thing. And she probably wouldn't have lost custody. But the other thing is that, you know, and it goes back to the same thing. The ex-wife painted it to be that I was a liar, and I'm sorry, but no man's gonna ever plead guilty to something that they didn't do. It's not gonna happen. So at what point would you now say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean what I said, or hey, I'm sorry, you know, I never said that, you know?
Yeah.
So, and it kind of goes back to the same thing, because even now, like my grandmother and I, we have a very touchy relationship. And I love my grandmother to death. Don't get me wrong. However, we, again, didn't start talking until after my other grandmother on my mom's side had passed away a couple years ago. And they were friends back in the day. So it was inevitable for my dad's mom to be there at the funeral. That was the first time that I had seen her in a long time. And we got to kind of talking, and it was back to the same thing, you know. And at what point do you still continue to have a relationship with your daughter's abuser or with your granddaughter's abuser?
Well, you know, you got to also keep in mind, though, to sit there and say a 7-year-old's a liar.
Yeah.
7-year-olds aren't typically liars. They might.
Yeah.
They might they might talk about something and get the I's and the T's crossed.
Yeah.
But to say that a 6 or 7-year-old is a liar, you know, adults are liars.
Yeah.
You know, children aren't liars.
And
you know?
see, that's the one thing that I will never understand too. It's because after all the trauma that I've been through, and them knowing the abuse that I went through with my ex-stepmom, or whatever you want to call her, with my dad's ex-wife, you still continue to have a relationship with her.
Yeah.
Why? Why?
That's a good question for them.
And it even goes to a point too. It's like my grandmother had called me, it was a couple weeks ago, and somebody had told me, she's like, she likes to play both sides. And I never really realized what that meant, of playing both sides. And I had called my grandmother, and she's like, she was really defensive just getting on the phone, you know, and she was like, oh, you know, you haven't called me since since a certain date. And I believe it was like August, and now we're already it was June or something, May. It was May. And until now, it was in August when I called her. And she's like, what, you can't call me? And I'm like, isn't it a two-way street?
Well, you know, people also have to realize and not saying that you're not an adult, but who has the life experience? You know, who's the adult here?
Yeah.
You know, how old are you?
I'm now 25.
The 25-year-old or the 70-year-old? You know what I'm saying? And yes, it's a two-way street, but you know what? As the adult, as the grandmother, when you were younger and maybe she was in her 50s or her 60s or her 40s even.
Probably 40s,
it's like you're the adult.
Yeah.
You know? You can't sit there and go, well, she's 14 and she doesn't call me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And
so
that
there's
kind
a
of
lot
goes
of
back. See, but there you go. You know, you just proved the point too. It's like the same thing, because my dad always used to tell me, he's like, oh, you never called me. At what point are you going to sit there and explain to yourself, you're going to call me, but I'm the child. So you're the adult. So why wouldn't you have made the calls?
You know, I'm not trying to be a dick or anything, but that really shows a lot of the type of person that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, when the adults hold a grudge against a child, that says a lot about the adult.
And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of my family is that way.
Yeah.
I will say though,
there's a lot of people. It's not just you guys. There's a lot of people who are that way.
But I feel like a lot of my family are like that. Now, unfortunately, there's a couple people that I can sit there and say for sure that they were never like that and are never like that. And one, it even goes to a point with like my grandmother who passed away, and I wear her name on my chest every day. And when she passed away, there was a lot of issues that went on between the family. And the one thing that I always reminded myself was the kind of person she is. And she was always packing. Let me tell you, she was always packing. But the one thing that she was always packing as well was the word of wisdom. And she was never, ever, ever the type of person to ever say, hey, I know you're going through something. She would always tell you the complete opposite. It was always something along the lines of, I know you're going through something, but get your head out of your ass. You're on a new path, you know? And she was very direct. She was a very direct person. And the person that I was before she passed away, I wasn't quiet. I was a little, outspoken.
Well, you'd been through a lot already.
I was happy, but some things I wouldn't say. Now, I'm the complete opposite.
Sure. Well, what's funny is I always tell people when I'm in a parking garage and I hear somebody walking, the first thing I do, if it's dark and late or whatever, I will stop and turn around and acknowledge them.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that goes with a lot of things. When people are making you feel uncomfortable, regardless of the situation, the best thing you can do is acknowledge it. Because it makes them pause. It makes them stop. It makes them realize that you're not an easy target. You're not going to be an easy victim.
And that goes kind of back to the same thing, too. It's like, I don't think that I could ever be a victim again. A lot of the things that I've been through, even like now, like my husband, like we have our own home. Even though I know that my abuser would never, ever be able to come to me, right? Because
I'm
not here.
Right.
It even comes to a point where it's like, okay, even stepping in front of my house or even near my house, there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
There's cameras everywhere.
You've taken yourself out of being a victim.
I've taken extra precautions.
You're taking control of things. So
yeah,
that's important.
Because at the end of the day, too, and I've kind of figured this out too with a lot of the court cases that I've seen, whether it be domestic violence or sexual assault, or whether it be murder or manslaughter. Right? A lot of the times people end up getting either off or they don't get completely charged for the full sentence because there's either physical evidence, but there's no video evidence. So even now, like, I make sure there's always a camera recording.
That's smart.
Even in my car. And that's the same thing too. It's like, it's that bad to where people don't understand, or even some people, they've never been a victim.
Yeah.
And they are like, oh, lollygag, like just lollygagging around.
Well,
no.
I think a lot of people, especially nowadays with us, I guess technology and your phones and everything else, I feel like we're very detached from reality in some aspects to where people do not think that they can be a victim of something. And it doesn't even have to be a case like yours. Yeah. It can be going to the gas station.
Oh, yeah.
And people often are so detached from certain parts of reality that they don't know when they're in danger, right? Yeah. They don't recognize danger. I hate to talk about it, but you see, I don't know if you saw that girl from Ukraine who'd gotten stabbed in the neck. It's like she went and literally sat down on the bus right in front of her attacker, and she was minding her own business, but she didn't. And it wasn't like he was giving off these vibes, but it's too much trust in your environment. You should always be somewhat cautious, But I say one thing that I want people to understand, and this is part of like the I learned this from the special needs, I guess, area. There's a saying that they always say that behavior is communication. And I think as a parent, when you see behavior, you can't automatically chalk it up to, hey, I got a misbehaving child.
Yeah.
You've got to question everything.
Oh, yeah.
And negative behavior in a child that is consistent, it's a red flag for something, and they're
100%.
trying to tell you something.
Oh, yeah.
But Madison, I think we're about ready to wrap this up. It's getting late on us. But I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Of course.
And I love you. We're friends. We're old neighbors. And
Practically family.
if you ever need to talk, just holler at me.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Madison.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina podcast.
Yo, Barry.